Hello everyone, my name is Takuyi, and welcome to Dumb Events in History. On today's episode, the worst event that the Irish have possibly ever faced in their life. Albeit, there was the potato famine, but to be fair, I would say that this one probably takes the cake for them. Or in this case, the whiskey. I am talking about the Great Dublin Whiskey Fire of 1875. Over the course of one night, over 5,000 barrels of whiskey would be lost, and at the same time, 13 people would die. Now, as to whether or not which one was greater for the Irish, that is yet to say, but the events of that night are fairly stupid. After all, the whiskey that burned through Dublin that night would, in today's money, be over 6,000 euros worth of whiskey. Now, the fire began at Malone's Malt and Storehouse on Chamber Street, where these 5,000 barrels were being stored. As the flames reached the wooden casks, it caused them to explode, sending a literal river of whiskey flowing down into the streets of Dublin, which in turn caught alight, creating a river of lava that flowed down the street, setting any building that it touched alight. In this poor part of Dublin in the 19th century, it was not uncommon to have animals living alongside you, and as a result of this whiskey flowing down through the streets, which again, mind you, was on fire, panic-ridden animals ran through the streets, only adding to the mayhem of lava, like the whiskey that flowed alongside them. As an example of this, Captain James Robert Ingram, who was set to control the fire, was actually someone who was rather famous for his unconventional strategies. In one case, where there was a burning ship in the middle of the harbor, rather than try to put the ship out conventionally, he said, "Well, can we sink it?" And that was actually the method that they used to put out the fire, sinking the ship and then simply refloating it. Ingram knew that to pour water on the fire would be disastrous, as the whiskey, being primarily alcohol, it would simply float on top like petrol and spread throughout the entire city even further, perhaps even in different directions. Instead, he sent for soldiers and ordered them to pull up the paving stones and pour a mixture of sand and gravel onto the whiskey, but it was soon realized that this substance was still so porous that the whiskey was actually seeping through the sand, which is when they decided to use horse manure. Heaps of horse manure were brought in from the country, being piled up throughout the city. Literal flaming rivers were being absorbed by massive piles of shit. As this burning whiskey met the damp manure, it was soaked up, and the fire over time gradually began to subside. And although the majority of the whiskey fires stopped from being spread, it was still heading straight towards a nunnery that was down the road. When at the very last second, a wind miraculously came and pushed the whiskey fire back into the direction of the city, being contained by the manure that had dammed it up from all sides. Now, while considerable structural damage did occur, miraculously not a single person died that night of neither flames nor smoke. However, the whiskey fire did in fact have its victims. As the city burned, crowds of people were gathering across this 2-mile stretch of road, taking any kind of container that you can possibly imagine. Whether it was hats, shoes, pots, pans, cups, utensils of any variety and sort. They were taking everything that they possibly could to scoop up this free whiskey. Mind you, that simultaneously was on fire and was also touching heaps of manure that was on the side of the road, taking it for themselves. Subsequently that night, 13 people would die of alcohol poisoning, which, to be honest, has got to be one of the most Irish things that I could possibly ever say. And with that, I hope you enjoyed today's little episode on the Great Irish Whiskey Fire of 1875. Join us next time for our next dumb event. And anyway, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, as well as hit the notification bell here so you get notified next time that I post. Again, thank you. Have a good rest of your day, guys.